Same way, Minister. Yeah. Yes. Statements by ministers should be committed.
Your Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. May I first apologize for being a few minutes late. I was trying to make sure that we could get a printed copy for members. But I want to thank you for this opportunity to address you this evening. Today is exactly 1 week to Christmas 2018, and it would make for a worthwhile case study to examine the attitude and outlooks of Barbadians today, December 18, 2018, vis-a-vis the attitude and outlook of Barbadians and well-wishers of Barbados 12 months ago and also 6 months ago. To say, sir, that we have come a long and far way would be to make the understatement of the year. Not everyone, regrettably, will be able to go to church on Christmas morning wearing designer shoes and designer clothing of their choosing. Sadly, not everyone will have the niceties that adorn the traditional Barbadian Christmas table. But what is very sure, sir, is that every Barbadian will wake on Christmas morning and on New Year's Day hopeful and confident of a brighter tomorrow. That is what we set out to achieve on the morning of the 25th of May 2018, when we received this mandate of leadership of our country from the good people of Barbados. We did not, sir, promise a quick fix. We did not promise gold, frankincense, and myrrh. We did not promise, sir, that there would be no pain. But what we assured the people of Barbados 6 months ago was that we would work assiduously and selflessly to turn the outlook and the fortunes of this country around. We promised that we would stop the decay and the decline, that we would stop the hemorrhaging, and that we would return pride to and confidence in the Barbadian brand. We promised 6 months ago, sir, that we would bring Barbados back to where it belongs, in the region, in the world, and in the psyche of Barbadians both living at home and abroad. Mr. Speaker, I am proud to report this evening that using every yardstick and every other measure available to me, that this noble mission has been accomplished. Barbados is on the road again. Barbados is this evening, sir, punching above its weight. And for this, Mr. Speaker, we must thank the good people of Barbados. We thank our social partners. We thank our well-wishers, our friends, and our supporters. We thank the regional and the international community. And above all else, sir, we thank Almighty God for steering us clear of the social and economic icebergs that surrounded this beautiful country of ours up to 6 months ago. Mr. Speaker, sir, the journey is far from over. Indeed, we are still climbing out of the hole. But I am confident, sir, as we approach this Yuletide season, that if nothing else, we have in this country today all hands on deck. So I move around the country, and I hear firsthand the huge signs of relief. I see and receive the nods of approval. I'm inspired by the mail, the tweets, and the WhatsApp messages that say, we know we hate to feel pain, but we understand that tough decisions have to be made. Bajans are confident, sir, that the sacrifices we are being called upon to make now will renown to our benefit and to the benefit of the country in the long run. My heart goes out, sir, to those who unfortunately have lost their job under the BERT program. And I truly wish, sir, that there was another way. I've said so over and over. But the conditions that this government inherited just over 6 months ago were nigh short of calamitous. No self-respecting administration could have sat idle and allowed the rot to continue in this country. Long before May of this year, every Barbadian carried around a broken feeling. Every Barbadian knew that the boat was leaking. Every Barbadian knew that the captain was asleep and the first mate was swimming in waters too deep for him. Every Barbadian saw 10,000 people marching, but nobody was listening. We lost a decade of economic growth and prosperity in this country. Between 1993 and 2007, our economy more than doubled on the back of 14 years of growth, from $4.1 billion to $9.5 billion in this country. And then, regrettably, that growth came to a halt in 2008. And the economy stagnated for the next 10 years, with our GDP effectively remaining the same in this year that it was when we left government a decade ago. And at the same time, the rest of the Caribbean and the world at large passed us by. The absence of growth not only meant less disposable income for Barbadians to take home, but it also meant that we were not earning foreign exchange while consuming what reserves that we did have at an alarming rate. Because, of course, sir, we had an unbelievably high debt service, and we had a government making inappropriate policy decisions. So what was the result? Our reserves fell from almost $2 billion down to almost $400 million earlier this year. Just over $400 million. So that when the last government began a scorched earth policy, forcing Barbadians to wait an extra 90 days for an election, for no other reason than to give way to their friends and give our future away to unscrupulous contracts and contractors, and further bleed our reserves, so that the new government would preside over crisis and damnation and the old government would look less bad, we were quietly planning. When they piled up debts to the point that Barbados became the third highest indebted country in the world, and from 2009 caused the country downgrade after downgrade after downgrade, to have its credit rating pulled from investment to junk grade, we were planning. When they were bathing in the sea, telling all of us that the South Coast sewage system was not failing, and that the 4 international travel advisories warning our tourists away from Barbados were unjustified, we had to be planning. And when they signed international commitments to end the preferential tax system for our international business sector or for our manufacturing sector by December 31st of this year, with no plan as to how to achieve it, thinking that this would trip us up as a new government and make them as an old government look less bad, we were planning. When they pulled themselves out of their stupor to shamelessly run around Bridgetown on the eve of an election, paying off friends and awarding long-term contracts to people whose contracts were not anywhere near due to be renewed, in some instances 18 months and more, we were planning for the calamitous state that we would inherit. We set out our plan, sir, and the principles that lay behind it in the People's Manifesto, and of course that was based on the Covenant of Hope that we set out 2 years prior. Mr. Speaker, the previous government, the last government, signed much under cover of darkness, and so we could not know the full details. But we knew that the task before us would have been urgent, so vast, so complicated that one of the few things that we could commit to with certainty was the manner with which we were going to deal with it, with our priorities, what our priorities would be, and how we would sequence our early action. Mr. Speaker, we made it clear that our golden rule was this, and this alone, that whatever we must do, the burden must be shared. Whatever we would do as a government, the burden was to be shared. Labor, workers, would carry a heavy burden. But unlike previous recessions, Labour could not carry this burden alone. The owners of capital would have to help carry the load. The task was so monumental that we knew that if each of our communities was forced to carry all of the burden themselves, our society would break, would implode. Some may have considered it politically unwise, sir, to spread the burden to as many voters as possible. To workers, to savers, to pensioners, to bankers, as well as tourists. But we always knew that many hands would make light work. And we take the allegations and the attacks on us as an attempt by those who feel that we should not be taking action to be a last desperate act to get people to vote against their future and to not believe in their future by believing that by snapping a finger, Barbados could return after a decade of loss and a decade of implosion. We knew that we had, however, no magic powers, and that we could not snap a finger, but we could make many hands make light work. And that is what we have done. We knew that this has been the Barbadian day since our independence, that we have always been about solidarity, and that the climb that we would have to make would be so steep that we could only arrive together as one if we climbed together as one, holding on to each other. That is the Barbadian way. We committed ourselves to be consultative and transparent, to shine light where once there was only darkness. And as a result, sir, our very first order of business on the morning of the 28th of May was to return the social partners to the center of policy making in this country. It was our very first meeting, and we committed to working with each other to save our dollar and to transform our country to be in the best that it could be. I am committed, sir, indeed we are committed as a government to listening to all of our stakeholders. We have been prepared to accept delays in some of our bills and some of our initiatives, to consult more and to improve on them, such as the proposal to collect the value-added tax at the point of sale for online transactions, rather than when goods are imported. We have delayed this, sir, twice, and I now tell you today again, while we are sure it will come early in the new year, it will not start until we are satisfied that it is as right as it can be, because we know that this is a groundbreaking tax where only few countries in the world have determined that this is the best form of collection, I should say, for their tax system. And when we are fully comfortable with the mechanics, we will set a new date early in the new year. Similarly, we have spoken to the International Monetary Fund and indicated that the two pieces of legislation which we have as structural benchmarks that are now before this Honourable House, that we could pass them today in all of their stages. But that is not the Barbadian way, and that we committed to be able to have consultation on both of them, with the Public Financial Management Bill going to Select Committee and with the Town and Country Planning Bill remaining on the order paper for at least 1 month before we have any debate with respect to a new piece of legislation that will replace a 50-year-old act that existed on our statute books. So working out problems by listening and talking, sir, is the only way we know. It's the way I breathe. And I believe that taking time to listen and to adjust where necessary is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength. We also have recently deepened our tripartite arrangements with a new subcommittee of the Social Partnership of Labour, Business and Government to monitor the implementation of the BERT plan. And we've already had 2 meetings of that committee so far on the performance of our program. Last Friday, a memorandum of understanding was signed by the relevant parties, committing to the confidentiality that is required, such that all types of information may now be shared across the different partners. Consultative, transparent governments, sir, therefore, do not dismiss your concerns. They do not find increasingly bizarre excuses for potholes and for broken infrastructure. Indeed, the time for pompousness and for arrogance, that kind of behavior in government has no place in a modern Barbados that is governed by a caring government. We say to you, sir, that we will try our best to avoid mistakes. But we know, sir, that we are trying to do so much in such a short space of time that there will inevitably be a few missteps. And when we make those missteps, our stance will not be to deny them, but to be quick at correcting them, to listen, to improve. From silent government, we say, to smart government. And we will listen and correct. We know, sir, that the retrenchment fallout from the public sector modernization program could have been implemented better. I have said so before, and I've already apologized for it. But we are improving, sir, and we believe that in trying to step in and solve expeditiously clearly unfair outcomes, like the inability of the Barbados Water Authority to pay severance to its workers, or like the payment of gratuities now to those workers who had 10 years or more in the service, who would have otherwise had to wait for the gratuity. We are now correcting these issues such that these categories of workers can go home with their severance or their gratuity as is applicable. Above all that, sir, we will be fair but firm. Firm in defense of all interests of all Barbadians, firm against those who seek to bully Barbados into submission. I can tell you, and some have tried, that, and we will save their blushes for now, but we will not be held hostage by anyone at all. And we will hold to that position because we know that all of Barbados is behind us in this mission to rescue our nation. As the labor movement taught us from our early days, Barbados united will never be defeated. Those who have dealt with this government so far will tell you that whenever they try to take us, as the young people would say, whenever they try to get at us, as the young people would say, I do not blink. I want to repeat it, Mr. Speaker. I do not blink. And I do not blink because we are defending the well-being and the interests of an entire nation, not of a party or of an individual. Those hoping that this government will be taken in like the last government was and become submitting and yielding, often for a payment or two, or some may say a few pieces of silver, 29 or 30, may have better abandon hope for all of that right now. We draw the line today. No more and never again. We, sir, as a government will give transparency and good governance the force of law so that there will be grave consequences for the kind of behavior that brought us to our knees. And for all who ask for action, this government is not simply pursuing action for those that went before. This government, as we did today, is setting new standards of accountability and transparency that we must now, and all future governments of Barbados must now rise to. The new public financial management bill to which I referred earlier, that was brought to this House of Assembly today and goes to select committee, will hold us by law to a standard of transparency and governance that has never before existed in the management of our financial affairs in this country, both central government and state-owned enterprises. From the establishment of a fiscal framework, from the requirement for mid-year reviews, and from the requirement for us to set clear targets at all levels of government and state-owned enterprises and to hold each other to account for the same. These are the kinds of things that will allow us to identify malfeasance and misfeasance at an early stage when such is taking place in this country. The Integrity in Public Life Bill remains before Select Committee, and we anticipate that early in the new year, that committee will be ready to report. Can turn that piece of legislation from a bill to an act of Parliament, holding each and every one of us to the highest possible standards. But committing to a better future is good, but some may say not good enough. We need also to remedy the unfortunate and the egregious aspects of what we inherited as contractual liabilities from the last government. We have been renegotiating, sir, a number of one-sided contracts struck by the last government. And while we are not finished, we are now confident, sir, that we can save at least $36 million per year from renegotiating contracts struck during the previous administration with the Barbados Water Authority and the Sanitation Services Authority alone. At least $36 million per year. That is more than it costs us to pay the salaries of all who have been sent home from central government, which is almost 1,000 workers, and they come up to $29 million a year. So that just gives you context of these large sums of money that the government must use the taxpayers' money to be able to satisfy for the delivery of services. Sir, in one contract alone, we hope we can save at least $17 million per year over the remaining life of the contract, which is for at least another 10 years. Many of these contracts, sir, lock Barbados into unfair arrangements for long periods, as I just said, sometimes decades. What is important for you to remember, Mr. Speaker, is that we are not asking for people, any companies, to sell goods and services at below market prices. Not a fella, not one. But equally, taxpayers should not be required to pay egregious amounts such that companies can get back their investment in extremely short order. In some cases, a year or 2 or 3, when we would expect them normally to have a return that carries them out over a much longer period. I want to say simply, sir, that under my watch, nobody, and I mean nobody, is going to be allowed to jerk out the eye of this government. The process of reviewing those contracts will continue into the next calendar year, and we will report progress accordingly and specifically when the time comes. Let me recap further, though, our journey thus far. We laid out our economic priorities in the months before the general election. We said to the country that in the first 6 months, we had to pull the country out of the slide and to stabilize the economy. We had to bring the dollar to safety, and we had to build our reserves. Pull the People's Manifesto and read it under Mission Critical. You could not want clearer commitments. We had to create room for the government to act by restructuring a level of debt that was strangling the country to death. And the government, of course, had to act. It had to act to help people to live, especially those who had been pushed out to the edge. It had to repair critical infrastructures like the South Coast sewage system, like the roads that are now being paved for the first time in years, like accident and emergency at the hospital, where we now have the architectural plans that will allow the hospital to proceed early in the new year with being able to do the construction to build a new A&E. Like the court system, that we are now between repairing the building that we inherited that was dysfunctional and from which courts had moved, we hope to add new commercial courts and family courts next year. These are the things that were mission critical for us. We didn't hide it. This and many others. And the way forward was blocked, we felt, without the actions to correct these problems. and then building on them, we had to turn despair into hope and opportunity. We knew that we needed trucks. Some trucks will come and others have gone out to tender after an unfortunate incident that we had to resolve and correct, such that this government would not become involved with any taint. And similarly, with the buses, we had to make a determination as to what our future will be. A country that wants a 2030 fossil fuel-free economy cannot be buying 100 diesel buses again. And these are the issues that have delayed us in trying to resolve how best to plan out our future to meet the needs of public transportation while meeting the needs of sustaining our environment, because climate change is not now an academic issue. It is a real issue to which all of us will contribute unless we change our behavior. Mr. Speaker, that has essentially been the plan you saw us follow, as we told you we would, over the past 6 months. That is what led to the development of the Barbados Economic Recovery and Transformation Plan, now known as the BERT Plan. It was an internationally unprecedented plan to the degree to which it spread a sizable economic adjustment across a country and its international partners and our visitors and our creditors, not just the workers of Barbados who felt it, or the taxpayers who alone felt it in 91 to 94, in 81 to 82, in 74 to 76. In this and other ways, it has been so clearly a Barbadian plan. Solidarity and sharing of burden. It got the backing and support of the International Monetary Fund in record time, and indeed the rest of the international community. The plan has halted and reversed the 6-year slide in our reserves. Our reserves jumped from 400 million to just over $1 billion. Indeed, sir. Indeed. Today, as we speak, on the 18th day of December 2018, in the year of our Lord, our gross international reserves stood at $1,044 million. The first time since 2014. And for those who would write that they're borrowed, yes, they are borrowed. But guess what, Mr. Speaker? They're not borrowed at Credit Suisse rates, and they were borrowed not only from credible entities at affordable interest rates, but they were borrowed because people have confidence in us now that we can repay our debt. The last government could not borrow to shore up the reserves because no one had confidence in what they were doing or what they were intending to do. Our dollar today, sir, has been brought back to safety. We are not out of the woods, but we are a long way from where we were. If we continue in this direction, we believe that we can start the relaxation of some of our exchange controls. In a few months as well, sir, we executed one of the largest exchanges of government debt as a percentage of national income in the world's history. We will now save approximately $500 million of interest payments per year. And let me give this context. This compares with the previous government's attempt when the then Minister of Finance said that he wanted to embark on restructuring of debt in the last year all of a sudden. And his concept of a restructured debt plan would have been to save the government $70 million between interest and principal, period. $70 million. Our plan saves at least $500 million in interest per year and will save significantly on principal when we complete, as we are still in the process of discussions on the foreign debt restructuring component of our plan. Let me give it further context. That difference of $500 million is really the equivalent of 8,500 jobs more a year, or 10,000 if you net out the 1,500, that those persons would have had us send home if we could not save $500 million through debt restructuring, through changing our interest payments. We would have had to send home the equivalent of 10,000 workers from this country in order to be able to get an equivalent level of savings. Mr. Speaker, so when we say to you that the burden has been shared, we mean it. And that $500 million comes now not from the workers, but from entities, banks and insurance companies who combined made billions of dollars in the last decade. Just under $3 billion in profits combined between those groups, when everybody else in the last decade was losing income in real terms. So that we not just talk the talk, but we have walked the walk with respect to the sharing of the burden. As a result of this and the economic adjustments we've made, the government will not need to borrow domestically for the next 4 years, and our debt levels have now been put on a downward sustainable path. It has already fallen, our debt has already fallen from approximately 170% of national income to 134%. And Mr. Speaker, the better news is this. If we use the new GDP figures, as we must now, our debt to GDP ratio is now today 123%. Our aim, Mr. Speaker, is for our debt to GDP to be below 100% within 5 years, and we can do it, sir. Between April and November of this year, our gross tax revenues have increased by $118 million compared with last year, and our expenditures have fallen by $322 million, leading to an overall improvement in our fiscal position from April 1 to 30th of November of $430 million in less than 6 months. Just a little more than half of that in this fiscal year is as a result of the debt restructuring. But there have been other adjustments made through taxes and through expenditure adjustment to give us that combined impact of $430 million adjustment in our circumstances. When I addressed this Honourable House in June, I told you that we would be pursuing a $1 billion adjustment over the course of the next 4 years. We are 40% there or thereabouts with this adjustment. The international credit rating agencies gave us their support with the first credit upgrade in over 15 years. 3 notches up for our domestic currency. So much so that people went to look in the dictionary to see if the word upgrade was a real word. But sir, as I said, we will await the foreign debt restructuring before we complete this story and this chapter and this saga, because we understand that there is still work to be done, and in the next few months I believe that we will get there. In fact, we are confident that we will get there. The best measure, sir, that Barbados is back for ordinary Bajans is that we've put our fiscal house in order, and that normal service, as CBC used to say years ago, normal service is resuming. Those are not my, they used to say resuming shortly. I am telling you normal service has resumed. Those are not my words. Those are the words of the people who went and picked up in their mailbox or saw in their bank statements. For the first time in 6 years since 2012, tax refunds being given to them in the year in which they filed. Personal income tax returns. VAT refunds, not returns, refunds for all of them. Over $76 million was paid in the last 4 weeks to Barbadians of all types. $76 million in refunds. So that when we say to you that our revenue was up, our revenue at $118 million being up was able to accommodate the return to normal service with people being able to get their income tax refunds, get their VAT refunds, get their corporation tax refunds on time. We have now to clue the VAT refunds for the next quarter, but suffice it to say that these are the things that cause people to believe that normal service has been resuming. And as we are here, I announce tonight, sir, that we will offer starting in January, from next year, January next month, a cash settlement of 85 cents in the dollar for every one of those suppliers owed money by the state-owned enterprises of Barbados, by central government of Barbados, and who want immediate settlement. In other words, who do not want to be repaid over a 4-year period. If you want your money now, we will offer to pay you immediately 85 cents in the dollar, such that those companies that are owed, and many of whom are at the brink, can be paid, having not been paid for years in this country. Remember, sir, it is about $300 million in debt remaining owing to these companies, and we believe that if persons are prepared to accept, as I said, 85 cents in the dollar, we can seek to facilitate this payment immediately from January going forward. But remember, sir, the government will vet all claims to verify the amount stated to be owed by the government to various suppliers, and that it will not just simply be a case of a man saying, you owe me X and the government must pay Y. It does not work that way. Once the amounts can be verified, we shall be repaying the people that the government of Barbados has owed for too long. Similarly, sir, I want to make it clear that as we owe, we shall pay. But equally, I call on those who owe government to pay. And even if you have to do so on terms like how we are paying many of our creditors, everybody understands that it is not business as usual. That is a difficult environment. But in the same way that we are going to offer you on terms or over a period of time, we say if you owe the government, come and pay us and let us get on with making this country the best. So, Mr. Speaker, we will not shy away from critical decisions as a government. Government is about choices, as is life, and we shall make them. We have deliberately created sufficient space in our budget to tend to the most vulnerable in our society. And we must gather everyone into our community. None must go hungry, no soul forgotten, and so on we must go. The truth is, sir, we must have a national ethos about caring, and to that we are committed. Indeed, sir, in addition, we eliminated the NSRL. Most people even forget what it stands for now. The National Social Responsibility Levy. And I am pleased to say that the effects on the general level of prices are finally coming down. In May of this year, our inflation rate was 5%. In November, just gone, our inflation rate had fallen to just 0.81%. Some goods have fallen in price. So when you see goods still up there, I tell you, go and shop around this Christmas, and remember that less inflation means more spending power, especially for those on lower incomes, and that there are other prices out there that have come down. Because you cannot tell me that perishables are still old stock on which an SRL was paid before the 1st of July. If they are still old stock, well then I suggest you send them to the BNSA or to the public health laboratories, because they're going to make you sick. And we're going to call a spade where necessary. Mr. Speaker, sir, in addition to abolishing the NSRL, you know, they say Bajans have a short memory, so I'm just reminding people. We also raised the non-contributory pensions from $155 to $225 per week. They said it could not be done. And we said, give me the vote. But we did it. We are also paying the reverse tax credit of $1,300 for those earning less than $18,000 per year for the first time in many years. They said it couldn't be done, but we did it. We launched a $10 million trust loan program for early startup companies. They said it couldn't be done, and we did it. Yeah. I'm going to take a minute to talk to those of you who borrowed the money. I beg you do. People have a problem with a government voting money for poor people. I don't. This government does not. But I want you who have borrowed to show that our faith in you to allow you to be able to develop a credit history in this country, to move to the next level through loans. Everybody does it. I want you to pay back the money as you can, and any month that you cannot pay, come and tell the people what happened and why you cannot pay that month. To that extent, I've asked the minister to make sure that the moratorium is no more than 3 months. Because while we will give you 3 months to get up off of the ground, you have to pay back for your brothers and sisters coming behind you to be able to benefit as you have benefited. We will speak plainly all the time. We have also reached a special settlement with the pensioners who, under the domestic debt restructuring program, indicated that it was hurting them. And we have said, not even from 65 and up, but from 60 years old and up, we have accelerated repayments over the 4 years, with the first $20,000 being paid out last month to every pensioner who had Barbados government debt 60 years and over, with a promise that the next $30,000 will be paid in March, and that anyone who goes beyond that to $250,000, the next $200,000 will be paid every month over the 4 years, such that Barbadian pensioners 60 and over can cash out of Barbados debt instruments ahead of time of everybody else. We gave civil servants a 5% increase in salaries, first pay increase in 9 years. They said it couldn't be done. And they got the back pay here the other day, and that is why more money is spending in town. Don't mind the ones they're spending at others, spending at other people. More money spending in town the last few weeks because people for the first time have a little trala that they can do a little something to ease the pressure in the household. Mr. Speaker, we established the Household Mitigation Unit to support those families who have lost a job regrettably, and to help them choose from real options. And I am happy that they are now functioning and moving from household to household with those people. They will take some time, but we have clarity as to some of what people want, whether it is access to land, access to licenses, participating in the digitization program, participating in the retraining program. We are going to work through every single one of them to help replace and to help them integrated back into Barbadian society and working. Mr. Speaker, sir, against that background, we are earmarking almost $30 million a year from the training levy and the other amendments that we make now to take half of what would normally go to the severance fund to supplement the training levy, because Barbados must engage in the most ambitious retraining program for the next 4 years. The whole country is a campus. The whole country must allow us first to identify every job. What are the rudiments of excellence in that particular job? Who can help train that person to attain those rudiments of excellence, and who will help monitor us as we seek to maintain those rudiments of excellence. If we can retrain everybody in this country, our future is bright. And to that, almost $30 million a year for the next 4 years we will invest. Similarly, we have secured funding, we believe, for the digitization program from the Inter-American Development Bank. We are in the process of completing those loan arrangements for displaced workers to be retained in the digital economy and to help us digitize the millions and tens of millions of government records that are sitting down in paper across ministry by ministry by ministry. And we need to put this into a digital format if we are to move forward. Mr. Speaker, sir, we also created space to stop the rot and to bring back our infrastructure. We have inherited, and I'm fair when I say so, a $100 million road rebuilding program that the other government negotiated but never got to execute effectively. We will execute it. We are advancing a long-term fix for our South Coast and Bridgetown sewage systems, and Cabinet has taken the decision that the South Coast sewage treatment plant must be upgraded or rebuilt to tertiary standards, as must Bridgetown, and without prejudice to that there must equally be a second permanent outflow on the South Coast to replace the temporary outfall that has just been completed within the last few days. Unexpectedly, sir, we had also to find funds to do critical refurbishments at Grantley Adams in easing the pressure on the cruise air-to-sea passengers, but most importantly on the repaving of the runways, which are absolutely critical if we are to ensure no disruption to the flow of our tourists, our friends and our family. Sir, I spoke to you about the accident and emergency at the QEH and expanding the capacity at the 2 polyclinics for 24 hours. These things will shortly be done. Mr. Speaker, they said we couldn't do it, that we couldn't afford it. And we said from day one, government is about choices, and that these are the choices we in the Barbados Labour Party will make. Despite all of our expenditures, despite all of the refunds, despite all of the repayments, your government today, Mr. Speaker, has moved from a decade of deficits to the first surplus in this quarter. Mr. Speaker, a surplus in a quarter. Can you remember when last you heard that in this chamber? Talking about Barbados? Sleep a little easier tonight, please. I beg you do. And I want to thank all of the officers in the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, all of the advisors, all of the ministers, for helping us to get to this point. Many of you may not realize, as up to Monday night, we have these officers working some hours that I really, really do want to thank them. Really do want to thank them. I understand that our covenant with the Barbadian people is that Barbadians will take strain today to get their country back tomorrow. They will suffer higher taxes and user fees, a slimmer government, but only if we fix the problem so that we never end up back here again. Restoring the credibility of government in this country and the Barbados government's credibility internationally is perhaps one of our most important tasks. And we hope to do so through our actions and our manner, but also through the new laws and the new rules that we are putting in place to hold ourselves to higher standards. Never again must power, greed, and corruptible activity be the hallmark of a Barbadian government. And we can only say so, but it's up to you, the people, to determine that. Because when you see the kind of madness that came to be associated with government in this country, we have to ensure that we stand up and say, not bout here. And I spoke to you about using the laws to hold us to a higher standard. We have strictly limited the ability of the central bank to finance deficits through the creation of money. We came here in July and moved our overdraft limit from 10% to 7.5% because we said we feel we can submit to a higher form of discipline in this country. And today, I am happy that our overdraft remains below $70 million from that high of $323 million or whatever it was when we amended the law. We also set ourselves new rules with the issuance of primary securities by governments and to give parliamentary oversight for the first time so that people could not hide ever again in a central bank and issue securities and print money willy-nilly without anybody being able to hold them accountable any part. Click what we're going to deal with next year, not this year. Mr. Speaker, these are the rules that we have set ourselves that are far stricter than what the last government adhered to or had to live with. They did not put these rules in place to guide their behavior. And we did this not because of an IMF program. There wasn't any IMF program in July when we came here to do this. We did it because from as far back as October 2013, I had a press conference in that same office now that the leader of the opposition occupies. And long may he occupy that office there. Well wishes for you at Christmas. But I had a press conference in October 2013 that pointed out that the central bank governor had certain responsibilities to this country and that you could not be seeking to buy up primary securities on the part of the government without any kind of parliamentary oversight whatsoever. And we promised then that if we ever became the government, we would introduce legislation that would, like Jamaica, require us to have parliamentary oversight over that kind of behavior. The government of Barbados has a rule now under our laws that you are limited to 10% of approved expenditure with respect to the issuance of any primary securities. I mentioned the new public financial management bill, and for those who want to know what it also does, it also replaces and puts back at the center of our laws a decision that holds ministers liable for losses taken as a result of decisions where they go against their public servants and the independent advice from their public servants. They will become liable in the same way that a previous Barbados Labour Party government sought to put that in the law for the very first time in this country. As the first 6 months leave us, therefore, sir, we have reached our milestone. The first bell can be rung. Barbados is back. This Christmas you can take a breather. But being back is never enough, because the journey has to continue. And we are on track, we're passing the right road signs, but there is still much further to go. Being back is about establishing the base from which we move forward as a nation and as a people. Said always, stabilize the patient. Stabilize. How many times have you heard me? Stop the bleeding. Stop the hemorrhaging. Deal with recovery first. And whenever we finish that, move on to transformation next for a purpose. Our ambition is not just to live another day, but for all of our people to be empowered to live the life they wish to lead. Almost sound like Barrington Levy. For all to smell the sweet fragrance of their independence. It is why even over these first 6 months, sir, we restored free tertiary education in Barbados to Barbadians. We said it must be done. And Mr. Speaker, sir, it has been done. It is why even in this period of intense adjustment, we have ring-fenced our education, health and welfare budgets, because we know that there's some sufferation, but we are going to protect our people. And in the next 12 months, where we look to make the reforms that will improve the effectiveness of these budgets, so that as we present in our Covenant of Hope, we can better enable every Barbadian from every family and every community to be confident, active, healthy, happy, and economically empowered members of a just, inclusive, and caring society. I know, sir, and the leader of the opposition is smiling because he knows, too, like us, that that is the real prize we are going after. Not just the good fiscal figures, but Bajans who are confident, active, healthy, happy, economically empowered, part of a just, inclusive, and caring society. It is why we say, sir, that economic growth is essential in getting us there. And the notion that you could ignore economic growth, as the last government tried to make they tried to make it a badge of honor, that they didn't want to talk about the economy and that they didn't have to focus on economic growth. And what did we see instead? Downgrade after downgrade after downgrade. It is why, in addition to what we have done on reserves and deficits and debt relief and stabilization over the past 6 months, sir, we've been working on other fronts, 3 other fronts. We've been trying, sir, to attract traditional foreign investments to Barbados. We've completely overhauled our tax system to excite local entrepreneurs and investors at the corporate level. And third, we are using new technologies to improve service and opportunities in the public and private sectors, and these will roll out in the next year. The commercial banks are already reporting a wave of new foreign investments coming. One of the most significant, of course, will open in a matter of weeks, Ross University, which will bring over 1,500 students and almost 100 faculty from January the 5th, and substantial inflows of cash. These 1,500 students and 100 faculty members need transport. They need to eat. They need to interact with Barbadian business. In short, they are 9-month tourist equivalent to a jump that will give us more than 10% in our tourism numbers, because they work out to the equivalent of 75,000 one-week tourists if we were to equate their value. They will make a significant difference to life in Barbados in 2019, and we thank them for being here. Similarly, more investment, we believe, will come when everyone hears of the convergence of our domestic corporation tax rates to our international tax rates. So those once paying 30% on their profits will now just pay 5.5% or less, down to 1%. We expect this to bring forward new investments and jobs. Our digitization program is part of a broader plan to make doing business in Barbados considerably easier, faster, and cheaper, with more streamlined online services and payments. Our regulatory sandboxes are a way of safely fast-tracking new technologies to make private transactions easier, faster, and cheaper too, for the new economy and the new technologies, for the fintech, as they say. Mr. Speaker, sir, transformation is our big agenda. And as we move from stabilization and recovery, it will be the focus, for transformation must be our generation's agenda. We are clear in our minds, sir, the path we must take and the policies we shall pursue to get us to safe ground. The government that I have the honor to lead will take hard decisions. We will burn the late night oil, regrettably. I laugh because they know exactly what I mean. In the new year, we will continue to roll back our shirt sleeves, bend our backs, and continue to do what is necessary to rebuild our nation. I am inspired, sir, by the approach of our social partners. I really am. And that is why you will hear me thank them on each occasion. It cannot be easy for unions to see workers go on the bread line. or for businesses to agree to measures that will hurt their operations or cut into their profits. But sir, we all recognize that what is at stake is bigger than each and every one of us. In the final analysis, this is Barbados, the land we love, and the only place that 99.9% of us would wish to live. We are eternally grateful, sir, for the cooperation, assistance, and well wishes of the regional and the international community. Particularly, sir, the various multinational and multilateral agencies that have come to our assistance and who have demonstrated their confidence in us under this new dispensation. And let me say, we have had the honor of engaging at the very highest levels of all of the international financial institutions with whom we deal with. And I want to thank them. They didn't need to meet with us and they didn't need to take us on. Indeed, they didn't meet with the last government. But they met because we requested. I suspect they didn't meet because the government didn't request sufficiently. But we have met with each of them, recognizing that it is only through communication and cooperation that we can build the necessary bridges that will help us get out of our predicament and that will help us play the meaningful role that Barbados has become accustomed to playing in regional and international politics. I have said over and over that we must not only become a global hub, but again a global voice. We could not have made the progress, believe you me, without them giving us the benefit of the doubt on some occasions, and without giving us the chance to prove our seriousness as a government that had reneged on promise after promise after promise. Because for them, if the government of Barbados in the past reneged, they don't know the difference between BLP and DLP and NDP and all other kind of Ps. What they knew was that the government of Barbados was not keeping its word. And the fact that we have been able to come in and show our seriousness and keep our word and to go beyond the call of duty in many instances has made the defining difference in soliciting their cooperation for us. So I can say that this has been a global team effort, the consequences of which, sir, is this new and emerging Barbados. And this brings me, sir, to the required role of Barbadian citizens and Barbadian residents. Citizens and residents, sir, of this fair land. You, the citizens and residents of this country, have given us your assistance, your cooperation, your support, and your well wishes over the last 6 months. And we need for this to continue. We need for residents this year to end this 2018 and to start the new year thinking and breathing country. Let us all be inspired by what is good for our island nation. Let us revel in the changed image and the perception of Barbados. Let us recommit to the cause of nationhood, for Barbados needs each and every one of us in the new year to fly the flag and to fly it with pride and honor. The truth is, sir, we end 2018 on a positive note, but 2019 promises even more. We hope in the new year to get our economy fully out of the woods and back on a desired path. I'm sorry that to date there has been some pain. And the truth is, sir, I cannot promise a rose garden in the next 12 months. But what I can say is that I am confident that by the 18th of December 2019, fewer persons in this country will have reason to complain. By the 18th of December 2019, fewer persons will be without a job. By the 18th of December 2019, fewer persons will be living below the poverty line. And by the 18th of December 2019, our infrastructure will be undergoing a major overhaul, and the standard of our living of our people will continue to raise. Think Barbados. Respect Barbados. live Barbados, promote Barbados, and your government shall lead this country back to where it belongs, at the top. For now, we ask you to remain committed to a better tomorrow, to stay the course, to continue to march with us, because we don't take your commitment for granted, and that's why I ask for it today again. We know that this journey is long and it is arduous, and we know that you have sacrificed much and pinned your flag to the country's mast. But we also know that this is not, and don't believe tonight, this is a victory march. This is a long march home, a march of redemption and renewal, a march to a promised land. And be assured that we will not sleep. We will not give up the mental fight until we have built, Mr. Speaker, sir, a new Jerusalem in Barbados for all. I say simply to you, sir, and to all members of this chamber, and to all who have helped us do what we have to do in this building, from the media to the security to the clerks at the table, to those who feed us, have a blessed Christmas. To the wider Barbados, I say the same thing. Have a blessed Christmas. And to us all, including myself, I say get some rest for the season. And when you have had that rest for the season, I say simply to us all, to all Barbadians, give us your patience. Continue to give us your patience, your tolerance, and continue to remain disciplined. And if you do that, I promise you that once you do that, we shall, as a government, command your confidence. I'm obliged to you, sir.